Hi, I'm Adam Summer. You're listening to the Yerushalmi Talk podcast with the support of the Yeshivat Devar Yerushalayim in Har Nof, Jerusalem. This is Demai, chapter 5, Halacha 7, extremely short Mishnah, extremely short Gemara. Art scroll, we're on 48a1. And we were just talking about what happens when you buy Demai from more than one source. And now the Mishnah is going to talk about buying definite Tevel from more than one source. And this is really going to be very short but very fundamental to try to understand the laws of separating tithes. So the Mishnah says one who buys Tevel from two places, in other words, two different people, may tithe from this purchase for the other purchase. Why? Because it has the same status. It seems obvious, but you need this ruling in here. The Mishnah's point is that the buyer does not need to be worried that the purchasers, sellers would be violating against selling Tevel, but over here, the reason that you can have this is because under certain circumstances, now normally you can't sell Tevel. However, there's going to be a special supplier out there who is going to sell Tevel on purpose, and that's going to be to fix mixtures where you have medumas where some Tevel falls into something that's already had things separated out of it. So you have some Tevel mixed in with some chulin, or you have some Tevel that gets mixed in with some truma, and then how do you handle it? So the Mishnah is going to say that one may tithe from this purchase for that purchase. And again, it seems obvious, but it's really not obvious. Really, the Mishnah is teaching that even though the buyer is going to be participating in a forbidden sale, we're not going to penalize him and force him to tithe each purchase separately. And he's going to be able to tithe it together because we're going to try to think the best of the Jew, and perhaps he's doing it for this permitted reason. This permitted reason would be to fix a mixture. Maybe you bought from this guy because you need a lot of Tevel to fix a mixture. Maybe you have a grain pile over at a big warehouse, and you're a big supplier to make bread and flour or something like that, and you need to fix a mixture. And so the first guy ran out of how much Tevel he had available to sell. You have to go to the second one. Well, you have to separate out the tithes, but the point is that you can do that together. That's not immediately obvious because you could look at it in terms of perhaps in some cases this could be a forbidden purchase, and so it would look like a leniency for forbidden purchase. We know Judaism doesn't allow that. So the Mishnah continues. It says this is allowed even though they said that a person is not allowed to sell Tevel, and that's generally the rule. Generally the rule, you're not allowed to sell Tevel because of a few things. One is he might not tell the buyer about its prohibited status, and then the guy would come to eat Tevel. And that would be, where it's, very serious because you get death from heaven if you eat Tevel. And, the sages are stating a law concerning the sale of Tevel, and this is not meant to be taken that the sages are allowing the sale of Tevel. The sages are going to be allowing the sale of Tevel only in one case. And the Mishnah says what it is here. It says, except for a need, the buyer needs to basically fix a mixture of Tevel and chulin. So I want to explain this because actually this is going to be the bulk of really the conversation in this Gemara. Really, if you have chulin, which, by the way, chulin has already been tithed properly. That's what chulin is. Chulin has had all of the tithes properly done. There's nothing inside of it that's belonging to someone else, like the tribe of the Levim, or or to the Kohanim or something like that. And it's totally a clean pile. But it becomes mixed with a larger amount of definite Tevel. Definite Tevel is something where you haven't had out any of the tithes. You didn't take out Truma Gedola, which belongs to the Kohen. You didn't take out the Meiser Rishon, which belongs to the Levim. You didn't take out the Truma Meiser, which comes from the Meiser Rishon and goes to the Kohanim. You didn't take out the Meiser Sheni, which comes next, which is going to be for you to have food and things on the holiday of the foot in the walls of Jerusalem in the future. And you also have to take out challah. We're talking about definite tevel. So if somehow the definite tevel of your produce fell into chulin that was already fixed, you can't just separate a portion from the mixture to tithe the tevel. Why? Because you can't know whether the separated portion has the right amount to tithe the tevel. So let's say you know that 40% of this mixture is going to be tevel, and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to take out 40% of this grain pile now. Well, you don't know that the pile that you took out is going to be the tevel, because maybe it's on the other side, or maybe part of it's on this side and part of it's on that side, or maybe you didn't get it in the exact right place and you only took out 5/6 of what fell into it. You didn't take out the missing sixth. So then what happens is you still have in there a portion of tevel. You can't eat that because you get death from heaven. Now there's two ways to see it. Either you're going to perhaps overtake on the chulin, and you're going to, in other words, you say, okay, well, I know that okay, I don't want to take out the 5/6. I'm going to take out all 6/6, but I don't want to take out the 6/6 of this. I'm going to take out 15/6, and just to be safe on this, I'm going to take out extra. And the problem is when you're going to take out mostly the chulin, and you're going to use you have to use tevel from elsewhere to tie the tevel in the mixture. That might not be effective, because in a small quantity of tevel that becomes mixed in with a large quantity of chulin, like you try to over tithe, right? You're trying to over tithe to take out this tevel. The tevel in the mixture is going to be subject to tithing only rabbinically, and so you can't tithe it now with something that has pure tevel, whose tithing obligation is biblical. That's going to be really what the problem is. So if you have a problem where the tevel is less than the chulin, and you're going to be taking out, let's say you're taking out only 5/6 of the tevel that fell into this chulin pile, you have 1/6 tevel still in the pile. You go eat it, you get that from heaven. Big problem. The tevel has to be taken out doraita, okay, when you're buying it from this supplier. Okay, that's going to be definite tevel. Now, the problem comes that if you're going to say, well, I'm going to scoop out extra amounts so that I definitely have lots of chulin in there, and definitely took out all the tevel. There's nothing left inside of it. The problem is that you get back to this other case where the tithing of that tevel that fell into the chulin is going to be d'Rabbanan, and you can't take something like from this supplier of grain over there that's going to be allowed to sell it just to fix these mixtures, where you're taking the grain over there, which has a d'oraita obligation for tithes, and saying, oh, you can go tithe this thing that has a rabbinic requirement to go and do the tithes. So how do you do this? Well, the way you do it is you're going to be taking the tevel that you're going to be buying, and then what you're going to do is you're going to separate out the tithes from over here for over there. So basically what you're going to be doing is, in order to tithe the mixture, you have to take out other tevel, which is not mixed with chulin, and then you designate the proper amounts of it for the tithes that's mixed into that, the mixed in tevel. And then if the owner of the mixture doesn't have any other tevel that he has to go purchase from someone else, then this would be a case where he doesn't have any way to fix the pile otherwise. So then it becomes a legitimate need, because the Torah is always concerned with the property of Am Yisrael, and you would end up where you have an unusable pile of grain. So the rabbis are going to permit this one very narrow use, and only in this specific case, so that you can take this totally untithed tevel and you can use it for this tevel that exists inside of there, you can tithe for this, for that. And that's how you fix it. The problem that you have over here is that if you take out now a mixture where you overtook the tevel and you mixed in hulin inside of it, that tithing there is now going to be a d'Rabbanan tithing, because the rabbis decreed that that on a biblical level, that a mixture of tevel in hulin doesn't need tithing on a d'oraita level. However, I'm talking about where you're overtaking now the amount of hulin inside of there. So again, you're taking out, instead of there's 6/6 of tevel in there, and you're taking out 15/6. So, way more than you need, right? Well, that pile that you've now created that has this mixture of tevel and hulin in there, well, that tithing there is going to be d'Rabbanan. That's going to be the issue, okay? So in the case that you have before, the correct way to rectify this and to fix this is going to be where inside of this main pile you have the tevel. You didn't remove anything to create a mixture of hulin and tevel, and really all you did is take out the separation of tithes for this place, for that place. That's all you did. And you're allowed to do that, right? You're allowed to take tithes. If I have tithes in my house here, and I have a granary over there for tithes, and I want to separate out tithes for food I have for here, for food I have over there, rabbis let you do that. That's no problem. And that's effectively what's happening in this case. You're separating out tithes for this new pile of tevel that you just purchased to fix this other pile in this other location, which happens to be in this hulin. That's what's going on here. Now, again, the Mishnah is trying to get into your head. You can't just scoop this out. If you underscoop it, your pile still has tevel in it. If you overscoop it, now you have a problem where you're trying to tithe something d'Rabbanan for something with something d'oraita for something d'Rabbanan. You can't do that. So again, the way to do it is just you leave it in place. You buy it from this supplier, and you tithe like for this location or that location. Everything's fixed, no problem. The Gemara is going to elaborate upon the Mishnah's permit to sell tevel for a need. And Rabbi Yonah said this is a necessary addition to the Mishnah. In other words, this is essential. And the Gemara says a person is not allowed to sell tevel except for a need. In other words, where the buyer has to fix a mixture of tevel and hulin. And the Gemara says, and even then, he may only sell to a haver. And that is going to be the chiddush. The chiddush here is going to be that, says the Marafulda, that Rabbi Yonah is teaching that the Mishnah, and this applies only where the buyer is a haver. You're not allowed to sell untithed produce to an Amma Aretz. Why? Because the Amma Aretz might come to eat it without tithing it. And then so it looks like you put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. And in this special case where, the Amma Aretz comes to the buyer of the tevel, you're not allowed to sell it to him. Now, the Gemara is going to continue. The Gemara is going to ask a question, obvious question. It says, but then how's an Amma Aretz whose tevel becomes mixed in with hulin, how's he supposed to fix it? He has no recourse because you can't sell him tevel to fix it. And it looks like, hey, this is not fair. I don't have any way to fix this blended mixture. And what about my property? What about the property of me? And, what am I supposed to do? And the Gemara answers, says, what should he do? He should go to a haver, and the haver will buy the tevel for him and tie the mixed tevel for him. Why? Because the haver knows how to do it. And the haver will use the tevel to tie the mixed produce for the Amma Aretz properly. And the haver, says Rabbi Kanievsky, must do it himself and not give the tevel to the Amma Aretz. So that's going to be that. And again, it shows why it's always so important to try to learn enough Torah so you can be a haver. Have a great day.